here! Season 2 of Arcane finally kicked off this past weekend. I'm super jazzed. It's one of my all-time favorite shows, mostly because I also would like a muscly hot boxer lady to refer to me as Cupcake, please and thank you. But since it's back, I figured now would be the perfect time to talk about one of my all-time top-tier villains, one who also happens to be perfect for D&D. So let's talk about Silco from Arcane and what makes him such a compelling villain, and how I would go about recreating him for my TTRPGs. One of the first things you notice about Silco is that he has a very slight build. He's not big, brawny, muscly. He's well-dressed, he's eloquent, and I love this because it broadcasts that higher sense of danger to me. Like, this character is someone you need to be more on guard, more on your toes around. To me, villains who take control via clever means instead of brute force are always gonna be just that little bit scarier. But that being said, just because he doesn't rough up people on his own does not make him any less ruthless. He's just also patient and measured, which, you know what, makes him about 20 times scarier. So if I'm recreating Silco for one of my games, I'm starting with someone unassuming. I might take someone like the village baker or a scholar and start with them as my base. And I'm gonna make sure that their stats are heavily stacked towards wisdom and intelligence, maybe even charisma. Speaking of being unassuming, even though Silco himself isn't physically strong, guess who is? The cronies that accompany him. Most important of all is Silco. God, I love her. Behind every smarmy, sneaky villain is someone with a bit more muscle, carrying out all of their day-to-day dirty work. Classic trope, love to see it. So we want to build up this villain who, you know, besides giving the orders, isn't really the one getting their hands dirty. They have people for that. But one of the things I really like about Silco is that he leads with honor and loyalty. So the people in his inner circle aren't just grunts. They're people who share certain values with him. His outer circle may be a little less virtuous, but Silco and Jinx aren't just disposable to him. He looks out for his own. So if you want to put a Silco-inspired villain in your game, now's the perfect time to build out a little henchman villain team of your own. If any of your PCs have backstories where they mention a rival, guess who works for your Silco now? Again, preferably as their muscle. But now's a great chance to potentially even use whole rival teams if you have ideas for a whole band of cronies. Pointy Hat has an awesome video on this that I'll link down to below. But the reason I like having multiple cronies is because that leads to games where you have mini bosses that the PCs have to beat on their way up to the big bad. I always think that type of build-up is really fun. And because villains like Silco don't really do a lot of the dirty work themselves, it's really a great opportunity to let your players dismantle their operation one chunk at a time. It can lead to really creative problem solving by them, and I always think that's fun to see. Silco's main cause is to free the nation of Zaun, a city repressed and neglected by the council members of Piltover who are supposed to oversee it. And because we see the way the enforcers treat the people of the Undercity, it's hard to completely disagree with Silco over this. So give your villain in your game a cause that the PCs can't really disagree with. So for example, if you're running Curse of Strahd, make your villain's goal to kill Strahd and rid the lands of this curse. Again, it's gonna be hard for anybody to want to stop that. But even with the PCs and your villain having aligned goals, maybe the way your villain is handling things is a little bit flawed. Maybe Silco didn't have to become a brutal Chem Baron just to make a stand against Piltover. Again, I think it's important if you're going to put a Silco-esque character in your game to show your players that this doesn't have to be the way. In Arcane, the foil to Silco is Vander, whose approach to freeing the Undercity has changed quite a bit because he's seen the lasting effects of this violence. His stance over time has changed quite a bit in comparison to Silco's. So instead of freedom at any price, we have a character who still believes in this greater goal, but who also has an essentially different truth. With Vander, it's that the safety of his people is the most important thing. So while he hasn't convinced the Council of Piltover to grant the Undercity freedom, he has built up this network of enforcers that he can work with, Undercity civilians who act as his eyes and ears, and he's made it so he can operate from this position of strength without the outright need for power that's granted by others. And this right here is an important thing to realize. Silco doesn't just want to solve this problem of Piltover's neglect of the Undercity. He wants power. So give your villain a cause or a goal that the PCs can't really argue with, but methods that they can. Going with the Curse of Strahd example. most PCs want to take care of him. In the final way, not the chicken soup kind of way. So maybe we decide to alter the plot of the werewolves in Barovia. Now they also want to defeat Strahd, but they want to do it by raising an unwillingly created army of werewolves. One that consists largely of kidnapped children that they've turned. No, I don't see any problems here. Even though both parties are united in their desire to kill Strahd, it'd be pretty hard for the PCs to let that one go, even if they do share a common goal. And you can support my goal of finding other awesome villains to do breakdowns of by commenting below and telling me who your favorite villains are. I have a little list going, but I'm always looking for more. And don't forget to like and subscribe, yada yada yada. Back to the video. Silco is willing to sacrifice anything to get what he wants. Well, almost anything.
Is there anything so undoing as a daughter?
One of the most humanizing aspects of this villain is how much he cares for his adoptive daughter. Sure, she's his adoptive daughter because he killed the rest of her family. But look how cute! Look at how he constantly protects her even though she's a liability to him and his plans. So, give your villain a weakness that's external to themselves. A sibling, an elderly parent, a flock of exotic birds. Preferably something that can be weaponized against them. And following the show don't tell methodology, try to work in nurturing scenes early on, maybe use snippets of conversation or other obvious markers that they care for this person. Just something that makes it obvious even though they're brutal, they still have this humanizing aspect to them. And so this one isn't directly about Silco, but I love the doctor and his little newt thing. I also enjoy the imagery of like the creepy fish things in his lair and the rat that gets the shimmer injection. And these shimmer experiments are something you can directly tie into this character. Maybe even one of his cronies is similar to the doctor, a bit of a mad scientist archetype, but all of this translates amazingly to having your villain use a ton of aberration type monsters. They're low-key one of my favorite genres of monster, and even though a lot of aberrations are more chthonic in nature, some of my favorite ones are like the void flavored ones from the Tome of Beasts book, and choice ones from Tome of Beasts 2 and 3 include leashed lesions, snatch bats, cat scratches, and pale screamers, which I actually adapted for some of my games, and oh boy, are they good. So there we have it, everything to make your very own Silco for your games. And if you enjoyed this video, check out the next one.